Tonight on SpeedWeek, the latest on Al Unser's condition.
I couldn't go out and run a race right now. I'll tell you that. I'd be in trouble.
And Emo wins his 4th straight 500 pole, but not without problems.
SpeedWeek is brought to you by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first August 1990 edition of SpeedWeek. I'm Bob Jenkins. We have a lot of news to pass along to you tonight in the next 30 minutes, beginning with the latest on Al Unser Sr., injured in a crash Thursday while practicing for the Michigan 500. The crash occurred in turn 3 when the suspension broke on his brand new Lola chassis, sending him hard into the wall. It took over 15 minutes for rescue workers to remove Unser from his badly damaged car. He was airlifted to Foote Memorial Hospital in Jackson, Michigan, and later transferred to Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis. Unser, who began driving Indy cars back in 1964, has had a glorious career, winning Indy 4 times, the national championship 3 times, and becoming the only person in history to win the Triple Crown, the Indy, Pocono, and Ontario 500s in the same year. Well, our Dr. Jerry Punch joins us now from Methodist Hospital with an update on Al's injuries. Jerry?
Well, Bob, the bad news is that the injuries for Al Unser Sr. were the worst in his illustrious racing career. The good news, he is here at Methodist Hospital of Indiana getting excellent care from Dr. Joe Bailey and Terry Trammell, 2 noted orthopedists.
I don't want to get hurt like this, but yet, you know, it's the chances we take. And we all just basically know it, you know, that you do run a high risk. And it won't ever happen again. Because I don't like these places, even though it's a nice hospital.
What happened was Thursday night he was flown here from Michigan and underwent an hour-and-a-half of surgery to install an Alta rod, a stainless steel rod inside the center part of his femur, the large bone in his right thigh. That should heal very quickly within 8 or 10 weeks. Now, his other injuries, he had a crack in the clavicle here, the bone, the collarbone on the right side, 3 broken ribs up under his right arm. So he could have been a lot worse, and fortunately for Al Unser Sr., he is getting great care here at Methodist Hospital.
Jerry, any indication how long Al will be out of action?
Well, I spoke to Terry Trammell just a little bit ago, and they expect him to be discharged here from Methodist sometime early next week. Now, it'll probably be 8 weeks before he can have weight bearing on that right leg. Now, he'll be on crutches for that time. Now, the fly in the ointment here, Bob, is the fact that on crutches, you have to put weight under your arms, and he has 3 broken ribs here, which may cause a little bit of a problem. Now, they expect that, optimistically, he may be able to climb back in a race car as early as 6 weeks from now, which would make him eligible to run the IndyCar race at Nazareth, Pennsylvania.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Well, that crash occurred on the first day of practice for tomorrow's Marlboro 500, but our Chris McClure, who is at Michigan International, says it hasn't been the only incident. Chris?
Bob, there have been some frightening moments over the last couple of days. Al Unser's accident saw Walter hit the wall. Ari Leyendijk hit his debris and hit the wall. Friday morning, Raul Boesel ruined a car going into the wall. There's a common thread with a couple of them. The right front suspension apparently failed with Al Unser's car. Lola did put out a directive to all, or an advisory to all of their car owners, saying beef up the push rod part of that suspension. It's the owner's option, but they advise it. Also, in the case of Boesel, they did break a push rod in the right rear, and they passed up qualifying altogether. Wouldn't risk the second car until new parts were built in Columbus. They'll be ready for the 500. In practice, in full tank situation, Emerson Fittipaldi fueling in the pit, a fire broke out. It was an error by a crewman. They got it out quickly. No one was hurt. Those are the scary moments. How about the fast moments? Let's look at the field. The top spot belongs to Emerson Fittipaldi to go with his Indy pole. The speed was well short of Rick Mears' 4-year-old one-lap record, but Emma was pleased in what is becoming an anxious year.
I'm starving for a win. I mean, I'm really looking for a win, and sometimes the race is very frustrating, and I hope here we can do well, and this is a long race, 500 miles race, and I hope I'll be there at the end.
In the middle of the row, another man seeking his first 1990 victory. Bobby Rahal practiced Friday morning at over 226 miles an hour, then slipped to a mark shy of 222 in qualifying. He was a mixture of emotions after that, angry and sorely disappointed.
You just don't like to see people mess with the car, mess with the valve. You know, you got to lift on the throttle to get the valve to reseat, and those 2 laps were spent just doing that.
Outside of row 1, the Penske of Danny Sullivan. The third Penske of Rick Mears is in row 2 with Al Unser Jr. and Arie Luyendyk. Then the improved Porsche team with new engines along with Michael Andretti. Eddie Cheever, as usual, turned in the quickest rookie time, this time using the PC-18 chassis they also had at the Speedway. It's going to be a typical Michigan 500. It's going to be very swift, if not at record speed. It'll probably be very close, and it's going to be hot, tough on equipment and on drivers.
Thanks for the update, Chris. In other IndyCar news, look for the Porsche IndyCar team to call it quits after this year, but its engine program may continue. Porsche will also withdraw its factory teams from the World Sports Prototype Series in 1991 due to rules which they claim will make their cars uncompetitive. And there's another significant IndyCar development that could have long-range effects. We'll have that story in a moment.
SpeedWeek is brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Coming up, are the Indy cars headed back to Monza? And Roush finds the going rough in TransAm.
Being a tough motor oil takes more than tough talk. Sure, one brand says it's for smaller cars. Well, Quaker State has been tested tough enough to exceed the most demanding specs for every size car sold in the U.S. Quaker State is one tough motor oil.
We asked some Honda owners why they switched to Dodge Spirit.
It's much roomier than a Honda.
You're not crunched in the back seat as you were in a Honda.
I feel that I'm getting my money's worth.
Dodge Spirit has an airbag.
Could save the life of someone in the family.
It's really built for travel.
It feels more solid than a Honda.
For me, Chrysler's making a car that's competing head-on with the Japanese.
Dodge Spirit, an American car Honda owners can be proud of.
When it comes to overall performance, Road and Track confirms it. The Dunlop D40 M2 outperforms the competition. First in wet braking. First in dry braking. Second in lap times on the test track. Second in road holding ability. Road and Track proves you can't beat the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
Ramon Cota, cold-blooded, untouchable, the world's wealthiest drug dealer. He controls the international crime cartel.
Isn't democracy great?
Colonel Scott McCoy, he commands America's maximum assault force. Two men on a collision course.
Let me go. Okay.
Chuck Norris, Delta Force 2, rated R. Starts Friday, August 24th at theaters everywhere.
Man, what a day. I could sure use a vacation.
Yeah, I'd like to be right here.
Ice cold buds.
Hey, maybe tomorrow we should bring the boss.
Nah.
Nothing beats a bud.
IndyCar rules for the 1991 season have already been agreed upon, but in 1992 there could be a significant change. A recent meeting involving CART, USAC, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway has once again raised speculation about the future of IndyCar racing. Now, the exact details of that meeting aren't known, but a couple of things are. Indianapolis Motor Speedway President Tony George wants slower speeds. CART and USAC tried to do that this year, but a new record of 225 miles an hour was set during qualifying for this year's 500. George recently attended 2 European Grands Prix and reportedly liked their formula of flat-bottom cars with 3.5-liter normally aspirated engines. And during that trip to Europe, he made his position clear on an international oval series.
Indianapolis wants to be part of a viable, very strong, viable series, whether it's domestic or international. And ideally, I think it's no secret that what we're trying to become part of is a strong international oval series. And, my personal feelings are is that we need to have a number of oval races, strong oval events as part of the series that we're a member of.
But ovals outside of North America are hard to find. The last one that the Indy cars raced on was in Argentina in 1971. Al Unser won both ends of a twin 150 there. Perhaps the most famous European oval is the high-bank parabolic Monza track in Italy. In 1957, the race of two worlds featured Indianapolis-type cars and European sports cars. The high banks are still there, but haven't been raced on in over a decade. Joining us to further discuss this matter is our Formula One analyst, David Hobbs. Now, David, what about this common formula between Indy cars and Formula One? Would it be good for racing in general?
Well, I think the problem with a common formula is, of course, like all these things, it sounds like a good idea, all have flat bottoms and all have 3.5-litre engines. The trouble is, of course, that if you had some ovals and some road courses, you'd end up with most of the top teams having two cars, one for the oval courses and one for the road courses, so expenses would go up. I might add here, too, that those Formula One cars, even though they've got flat bottoms, do generate tremendous downforce, and I don't think that'd be a problem at Indianapolis. In fact, I think at Indianapolis right now, say a McLaren or a Ferrari trimmed out, obviously they'd take a lot of the wing out of the car, would probably be able to lap at about 205 miles an hour. So it would be a significant decrease from what they've got now, but still pretty quick.
All right, now what about this International Oval Series? There's a replica of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway being built in Japan, but are there other European ovals that could be used, and would Formula One drivers be interested in running on them?
To answer the first part of your question, are there ovals in Europe? Well, there's some very old ovals in Europe. There's Montlhéry in Paris, which I raced on many moons ago when you were still at school, and of course there's Monza in Italy. The only thing that those two circuits have, quite frankly, is the real estate. The footprint's there for those ovals, but you couldn't possibly use them because they're the old parabolic banking, you know, which goes steeper and steeper as you get near the top. Well, of course, a modern car with ground effect would probably do about 400 miles an hour at the top before it came off the road. So they'd be out from that point of view, but you could use the real estate. Would the drivers like racing on the ovals? Formula One drivers are pretty tough guys, and I don't think they'd mind it one little bit. The 205 miles an hour wouldn't faze them a bit.
Thanks, David. Appreciate your comments.
Thanks, Bob. But I must say that I do think that the whole element here, there's an awful lot of cage rattling going on from Bernie Ecclestone and from Tony George himself. So anyway, it's great to be here on SpeedWeek again, and we'll meet you down the road, Bob.
All right, David. Well, some of the other questions being asked, would the cars use gasoline or alcohol? And would a 3.5-liter engine survive for 500 miles? Stay tuned. In our next segment, we'll talk with Neil Bonnet. And right here in our studios, Dale Earnhardt, who won last Sunday at Talladega.
Ironmen and wild steel horses from the frontier days of racing. It's Dick Wallen's all-new Sprint Car Classics Volumes 2 and 3, just $59.95 each. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO. Pro-quality wheel banging thrills and spills. Sprint Car Classics Volumes 2 and 3, just $59.95 each on Beta or VHS, with a bonus section of champ-dirt car action. All the hot ones on the fast tracks. Foyt, Larson, Branson. Sprint Car Classics Volumes 2 and 3, just $59.95 each. Visa and MasterCard welcome. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO now.
Family, they're my most important priority. So I had my attorney set up a trust, and I manage my trust investments myself at Schwab. Low commissions, no annual fee. Now, if something happens to me, my family is taken care of, the way I've arranged. Haven't lost my touch. Neither has she.
We give you more ways to succeed.
Sunday night, Kansas City veteran George Brett is one of baseball's hottest hitters. He leads the Royals against Ben McDonald and the Orioles. It's Sunday Night Baseball, live at 8 Eastern on ESPN.
Baseball tonight.
A few late news items. Kenny Bernstein and Buick will return for another assault on Indianapolis in '91 with a Lola chassis built around the engine. No driver named. Alan Kulwicki will be looking for another sponsor next year. Xerox won't be back. And IndyCar driver Scott Pruitt, injured in a preseason testing crash, has finished his rehabilitation in Indianapolis and has returned to his home near Columbus, Ohio. This has not been a good year for racing. 2 pit road incidents last weekend resulted in several injuries and 1 death. At Lorain County Speedway in South Amherst, Ohio, 1 man was killed and at least 5 others injured when a race car went out of control and crashed into the pit area last Saturday night. The incident happened when the throttle stuck on James Whaley's Pro Stock car during a heat race. Whaley was not injured. Then the next afternoon at Talladega, Stanley Smith in his first Winston Cup race was hit from behind as he was leaving the pits, causing him to slide into the car of Tracy Leslie, which was being serviced by his crew. Although it looked bad, all 4 crewmen were released from a local hospital after treatment of minor injuries. Also in Talladega, the Wood brothers announced they have signed Dale Jarrett to drive their Ford Thunderbird in 1991. Jarrett took over the ride after Neil Bonnet was injured during the running of the Trans-South 500 in Darlington in April. So where does that leave Bonnet? Well, he's in Pittsburgh this weekend for regatta, and we found him visiting a local transportation museum. Neil, where does that leave you and your association with the Wood brothers?
Bob, that leaves me exactly where I was at when we had the press conference at Talladega. I knew going in that press conference it was going to be a year from that time. I think it was misleading at the press conference. I said I'd be out of racing for a year. I didn't mean to the end of the season. They meant I was injured in April. The earliest I could think about it would be the following April, so that would carry over into the season. Before the press conference, I met with the Wood brothers, explained to them that I wouldn't be back this year, or probably not the following season because it would be carrying over, that they needed to get their ducks in a row and get their race team organized, and that's when we discussed the fact that they'd start looking for another driver. So I knew it was coming. I talked to the Woods virtually every week, and I knew they'd been talking with Dale and Sitgo, and I'm glad to see them get their package together where their race team can get organized and hopefully can start winning races. I'll be the first one to hope they can win races with Dale, and I'm looking forward to their association.
After all you've been through, do you still want to drive again, or is this a good time to call it quits?
Well, I can't hardly say what I want to do. Right now, I'm at the mercy of my health. The doctors, they're telling me what to do. I've always overrode anything the doctor said. I've always went ahead and done what Neil Bonnet wanted to do, what I felt like I could do. But this time, with the injury I had, it's got me in a position where I'm listening to the doctors, I'm doing what they say, and if they say you can do this or you can do that, I'll make a step forward. But right now, I'm sitting back, I'm trying to get well, I'm trying to get over some problems I have, and then I'll reevaluate what I want to do.
Well, thanks, Neil. We appreciate your time. The winner of last Sunday's Die Hard 500 at Talladega was Dale Earnhardt, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome the 3-time Winston Cup champion to our SpeedWeek studios. Nice to have you here.
Great to be here.
All right, you won 3 of the 4 carburetor restrictor plate races. You almost won the 4th. You can tell me, I won't tell a soul. What have you done to figure that plate out?
There's a lot, really. The guys worked hard in the shop. Really, Richard Childers and the guys are the reason why. I think the experience of racing with all the guys and learning the speedways like Buddy Baker and the Allisons as I came through the years, you know, I've got 10 years of experience in this sport now, so working the draft just right, and the hard work the guys have done in the shop. This car was prepared and built back last October, and it's been in the wind tunnel quite a few times, probably as many times as it's been on a racetrack, but it's been to the wind tunnel and testing at Daytona and Talladega, and I think we just had everything right. For those races.
You were just awesome in the race. You could pass where you wanted to. Weren't you playing with the guys? And weren't you patient with Elliott there in the last laps?
I don't think I was really playing with them, but I worked them well as far as working with the draft and getting by them. And it made it look easier than really it was. But I did use Elliott for gas mileage and drafting him, and I don't think we could have made it if it hadn't.
Now, I don't think there's a single Winston Cup fan out there that wouldn't say that they notice a change in Dale Earnhardt this year. You still won't settle for second place, but you're not quite as aggressive. Would you agree with that? Have you changed your driving style, your attitude?
I'm still aggressive and want to win. I can't stand to run second, or can't stand to when the car breaks. I don't know. I think the team has really got me pumped up, and but still, I think, you know, I know they work hard, and I may wait a little longer than take the chance I might have took a couple years ago, because I know I still can win, even though I might have to wait a lap or two. But I may mellowed out a little more this year than last year.
And I think it may be reflecting the fact that you are second in the most popular driver balloting. Is that something that you would really like to win?
I would, but it's something that's hard to win. It's hard to win the fans and the most of the fans. It's hard to get them to really vote. You know, the guys watching the race, they don't want to vote, go down and vote or anything, but send the votes in. But that would be important to win that. I think it's one of the most, you know, it makes you feel the best when the fans like you.
You're in Indianapolis for a Busch Grand National race tonight. Is it fun coming over and running this division once in a while?
Well, it is. We started out there, so, you know, it's a lot of fun running those races, and it's getting real competitive. You just don't go and win them like you used to, and the guys are real competitive and race hard. Got a busy schedule, you know, run IROC and then run that.
Now, The fact is that you're in Indianapolis, and I believe you were quoted a few weeks ago or a few months ago as saying you wouldn't mind driving an Indy car someday. Was that a misquote? How do you feel about that?
I'd like to test one and feel what it was like to run it around Indy or Michigan, some oval track. I don't know whether I like it on road courses, but the cars really, the speed, the power, and the handling of the cars really are interesting, and I think I'd like to try it one time and see what it's like.
But for now, you'll settle for the stock cars.
Oh, we're doing great. I don't think I want to change right now.
Well, good luck tonight, first of all, in the Busch Grand National race.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
Well, Benny Parsons is at Raceway Park to help cover that Grand National event, which can be seen next Saturday afternoon at 3:30 Eastern Time here on ESPN. Benny, welcome to Indianapolis.
Bob, I am tickled to death to be here. This is the 9th time that the Busch Grand National regulars have visited Indianapolis for the Kroger 200. And since the Winston Cup division is off this weekend, several of the Winston Cup drivers besides Earnhardt are here.
Last weekend at Pulaski County Speedway in Dublin, Virginia, Steve Grissom, a former All-Pro champion, had a clean sweep, setting a new track record in qualifying and then leading the race's first 66 laps. Things didn't go so well for former series champion Jack Ingram, who slid into Mike Porter in turn 4, and then had contact with former points leader Bobby Labonte. Porter was later involved in another incident, this time with number 12, Jeff Burton. Closing laps saw a great battle between Grissom and points leader Chuck Bown, but Steve held on for his first Grand National win, and Bown was the first there to congratulate him.
Bob, Chuck Bown might have finished second in Pulaski and second the week before in South Boston, but Chuck, with a 317-point Busch Grand National lead and 5 victories in 1990, what a year you're having.
It's been a great year, Benny, and second place is good, but myself and Hensley racing, we like to win, and we're going to try to get some more before the year's out.
A lot of folks say, Chuck Bown, did he just start driving? You've been around a pretty good while, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Actually, this is my 19th year driving, and I remember racing against Benny here in the late 70s at Riverside and Ontario and the Winston Cup events. And, it's been a long road since then. A Winston West championship back in 76, and then several years up in New England racing, and now I'm back down south where I always really wanted to be racing the Busch Grand National Series and with an Escafé Classic Pontiac, and we're having a great year.
But I'm sure that Chuck Bown, like most other drivers, wants to end up in Winston Cup racing.
Yeah, I certainly do. That's what I've been trying to do for many years. And, we're in the process of negotiating with Nestle Foods, our sponsor, about that possibility. We'd like to draft this entire team up to Winston Cup because it's a hungry race team. And maybe in about 6 weeks, I'll have some news about that, I hope.
Well, Chuck, good luck tonight and next year.
Thank you, Benny. Appreciate it.
Bob, you mentioned this race is going to be on next Saturday on ESPN. What's on the tube tomorrow?
Well, Benny, at 1 o'clock here on ESPN, you'll see highlights from the Interstate Battery's Great American Race. ABC will have live coverage of the Marlboro 500 Kart IndyCar race from Michigan International Speedway beginning at 1:30 Eastern. Then at 4:30, we'll have Barber Saab competition from Sears Point International Raceway.
We asked some Honda owners why they switched to Dodge Spirit.
It's much roomier than a Honda.
You're not crunched in the back seat as you were in a Honda.
I feel that I'm getting my money's worth.
Dodge Spirit has an airbag.
Could save the life of someone in the family.
It's really built for travel.
It feels more solid than a Honda.
For me, Chrysler's making a car that's competing head-on with the Japanese.
Dodge Spirit, an American car Honda owners can be proud of.
When it comes to overall performance, Road and Track confirms it. The Dunlop D40 M2 outperforms the competition. First in wet braking. First in dry braking. Second in lap times on the test track. Second in road holding ability. Road and Track proves you can't beat the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
Before records are broken and headlines are made, get the first and most informative look at all the upcoming day's action on Sports Center Game Day. Saturday and Sunday mornings at 11:30 Eastern on ESPN.
Late news from Michigan. 3 new teams will have use of the Chevy Indy V8 engine next year. The new Jim Hall effort, Dick Simon, and Tony Bettenhausen. In many ways, 1990 has been a great year for Roush Racing. Their Winston Cup team, with Mark Martin as driver, is leading the Winston Cup point standings. And their IMSA GTO team with Dorsey Schrader just took the points lead with a win last weekend in Portland. But the SCCA TransAm Series, well, it's a different story. Jack's teams have dominated that division for the past 6 years, winning 45% of all races, as well as 3 driver championships.
He's been the mark everyone's measured themselves against for years, and everyone else has kind of reassessed their program. Chevrolet, I know, has, and they put a real serious effort together, as has Oldsmobile.
And those Oldsmobiles and Chevrolets have won every race this year except one, including last weekend's at Road Atlanta, which got off to a bad start for Scott Lagasse, Max Jones, and Wayne Akers. Darren Brassfield failed in his attempt to take the lead from Scott Sharp just past the halfway point. Tom Kendall was more successful a few laps later, passing Sharp and going on to win his 3rd straight TransAm event. Brassfield came back from the spin to edge his way past Sharp on the last lap to finish 2nd. The Roush cars finished 4th, 5th, and 10th. Roush blames his lack of success this year on the SCCA constantly changing the rules in an attempt to equalize his V8s with the V6s used by the Chevys and Oldsmobiles.
We had a series here that 3 years ago that had turbocharged engines, handmade engines, one-off engines. Then we went through another experiment with 4-wheel drive. And today, you've got about 2 choices. You've got a V8 or a V6. You've got fuel injection or a carburetor. And as this series progresses and continues to grow, those choices will be narrowed down more so.
I think, Roush is thinking more long-term than immediate, what can we do to salvage this year? They haven't given up on this year, but I think that they're just looking to see, hey, what is really going to happen here for the future?
Well, the latest set of rule changes were handed down on Thursday. They prohibit the Chevy teams from using data gathering or telemetry systems, and they ban the Chevy cylinder heads that aren't available to all teams. You can see more of the Road Atlanta TransAm race tomorrow at noon Eastern right here on ESPN. As we told you earlier, NASCAR's Busch Grand National Division visits the 5/8-mile Indianapolis Raceway Park Oval tonight. 20 years ago, the 2.5-mile road course was hosting the final of 8 IndyCar races held at that facility. And that's the subject of this week's Dick Wallen Racing Classic. Defending national champion Mario Andretti led the 24-car field down for the green flag under bright sunshine. But Andretti, caught behind Ludwig Heimrath Sr., dropped to 3rd, while Mark Donohue and Al Unser grabbed the top 2 spots. Just a quarter of the way through, A.J. Foyt had his hands full trying to fend off John Mailer. Johnny Rutherford was handling the road course with ease until a broken gearbox sent him off course. Foyt was trying desperately to catch the leaders. Unser was setting up blistering pace, having lapped everyone except Donohue. Mario had already crashed out. Just 6 laps from the finish, Foyt ran out of fuel with no chance to coast back to the pits. An unexpected rain shower slowed Unser, who wasn't about to take any unnecessary chances. But Donohue, still hoping for a win, learned his lesson the hard way, as Gordon Johncock unlapped himself on his way to a 3rd-place finish. A rain-soaked Unser took the checkered flag for the 3rd time this season and easily went on to win the national championship.
It is one of the most rigorously tested fluids on Earth, relentlessly measured for maximum protection against the friction, the heat, and stress of today's engines. It is today's Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil.
The thinking that went into your Firestone tires took a lot of different tracks. At the toughest tracks in the country, we put Firestone tires to the test in all sorts of competition. We race a lot, we learn a lot, and it all goes into every Firestone tire we make. Firestone, tires that meet the test.
Got Firestones again, huh?
I've got a one-track mind.
The Denver Broncos try to achieve that one super season. The Seattle Seahawks, this year they mean business. The Broncos battle the Seahawks at the American Bowl live from Tokyo Saturday night on ESPN.